Development project has been
Even with
added.
Skullface dead, our pain is still right with us. We need more strength. We need more men. Diamond Dogs needs to be bigger. Missions have come in too. We still have a long road ahead of us.
Please select a landing zone. Landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at...
Emmerich didn't go with depleted uranium for Sahelanthropus' armor because of its strength.
He had nukes in mind.
Exactly. It's meant to use its body as the fuel component for a nuclear weapon. Sahelanthropus uses built-in uranium enrichment archaea to melt its own body and extract uranium-235 from the depleted uranium in its armor. Those archaea perform the enrichment in an extremely short time. The concentration jumps by a factor of several hundred, from 0.2% to over 90%. The end result being highly enriched weapons-grade uranium. Sahelanthropus' body itself becomes a nuclear bomb. Emmerich says if it were to self-destruct, the nuclear yield would be somewhere in the region of 15 kilotons. Since you need about 50 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to trigger a nuclear reaction, that would mean Sahelanthropus contains something like 23 tons of depleted uranium.
That's not very much.
No, it isn't. That's about what you'd expect to find in a main battle tank's armor. The point is, it can be transported anywhere, even use its conventional weaponry on the battlefield, and the international community will never suspect a thing. I just received word from the R&D team and the transport team out of Afghanistan. They finished installing Sahelanthropus on the base. It's ours now.
All right. Don't let any of the staff touch that thing. Especially Emmerich.
Of course. That guy's crush on Sahelanthropus is beyond a joke. Guess he really wants to see his tech stand on its own two legs this time.
That's not gonna happen.
I know it. So you've got no plans to make it operational again?
Damn right.
Boss, I want to hear it straight from you.
Hear what?
What the hell do you want with that thing? The drive is busted. It's not like it has a nuke on board. Even if the metallic archaea could turn it into a nuclear weapon, all it can do is self-destruct. Sahelanthropus just isn't a weapon anymore. It'll draw unwanted attention without even being a deterrent.
I know.
The weapon's development strut sank 2 feet under that thing's weight. That's 1 year's drop in a single night. We've started on reinforcing the strut, but there's no guarantee it'll hold up if a storm hits.
I know that too.
Boss, why keep it?
It's a mark. Us Diamond Dogs, we don't have a country to call home. That means we have no past, nothing to prove that we lived. Every one of us threw it all away when we came here. Sahelanthropus is a symbol to show that the likes of us brought at least one crisis to its end.
A mark in history. So we can't just fade away.
It's of no practical use to us. But we still need it.
A symbol of what we've done. I'm glad I sounded you out on this. Snake, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you.
I don't need gratitude. I need security. Keep Emmerich away from that thing.
Roger that.
Please landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Gaining altitude.
Mission list
Boss.
updated.
You can now give the order to develop or dispose of nuclear weapons from your iDroid. With a nuclear deterrent, even if you're discovered while infiltrating a rival PF's FOB, most PFs won't dare retaliate. But you, of all people, know how dangerous it can be to have nuclear weapons. So will you add nukes to our arsenal as a deterrent? Or will you take them away from other PFs and dispose of them to help build a world that's free of nuclear weapons? I'll leave that decision up to you.
Please select a mission.
The agent that the CIA had working for them inside OKB-0 has gone missing. We've been given the job of finding and extracting him. The target learned of XOF's plans to use vocal cord parasites and had hidden himself with the CIA's Mujahideen allies. But following Skullface's death, the Soviets retook OKB-0 and all contact with the target was lost. He may have tried to go back to OKB-0, but even Langley isn't sure what's going on. After all, they've never even learned of Skullface's plan. That's probably what they want to get out of the man once he's extracted. But we can't allow Langley to learn of the existence of the vocal cord parasites. That's why I want you to bring the target out, boss. Once we have him, we can report him dead and keep him on base. All contact with Langley is being conducted through a cutout. Our reputation should remain intact. As for the reward, it's already in the hands of the cutout. All you have to do is get the job done. Just like always.
Please specify a project. Please specify a project. Please select a mission. Mission accepted. Heading to Afghanistan.
extract the missing CIA agent. The target was laying low with the friendly Mujahideen during the vocal cord parasites incident, but may have headed back to OKB-0 after the Soviets recaptured it. Check the target's VI on your iDroid. Target this time is a Soviet soldier who was passing information about his country's activities to Langley. He's the kind of scum I'd like to keep off Mother Base. But he knows about the parasites. We need to extract him to make sure neither the US nor the Soviets learn of their existence. Extract the target alive. He might be able to tell us about what went on at OKB-0.
Buddy has infiltrated. The map has been updated.
Keep in mind that time doesn't stop while you use the iDroid. You can even move around while using it, but pay attention to your surroundings.
Cover me.
The map has been updated. Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Analysis complete. Analysis complete.
Нет, не делай этого! Я не хочу умирать!
Get down. Where are the others?
The map has been updated.
Where are your friends?
The map has been updated.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Spit it out. Where are the others?
Analysis complete. Guard post captured.
Talk. On the ground. Where are the others?
The map has been updated.
Where are your friends?
He's coming too. Roger that. Boss, you need to extract the target alive. He might be able to tell us about what went on at OKB-0.
You have arrived. Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated. Analysis. The map has been
That looks like the
analysis.
target.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
КП это зона 4. Объект обнаружен. Координаты 03850127550. Держите
Analysis complete.
We know where to find the target. Check your iDroid.
Оставляем группу. Оставайтесь там до ее прибытия. Конец связи.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated. Please support helicopter
Roger.
requested.
The role of the support chopper is to extract you and your targets from the area of operations. It'll respond to situations with support fire as needed, and you can use flare grenades to indicate the...
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
Subject on board. The rest to us.
This is P1.
Boss, that's a serious injury. It won't heal on its own. You'll need to treat it with first aid.
Clouds approaching.
This is P1. On station at LZ. Cover fire. In hot. In hot. Watch out, boss. Not maintain altitude. Controls non-responsive. P1 down. P1 down.
Target extracted. Exfiltrate the hot
Mission
zone, boss.
info has been updated. The map has been updated. Please support helicopter
Roger.
requested.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Speak. Where are the others?
The map has been updated.
You gotta extract him.
Don't speak. Where are your friends?
Mother base is now in the red. Please
Subject on
select a
board.
mission.
Leave the rest to us.
Unit
This is
dispatched.
B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Unit dispatched. Unit dispatched.
This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Gaining altitude.
Sun will rise momentarily.
Departing.
Extraction arrived at Mother base.
Yes, mission complete. Boss, that was exceptional. Boss, the target filled us in on what's been going on. He betrayed the Soviets, passing information to Langley, but got scared after learning XOF used the vocal cord parasites. Then came feelings of guilt that his leaks sent comrades to their deaths, and fear that America might deploy such a weapon itself. But in reality, XOF and Langley don't have a collaborative relationship, and Skullface was not working for America. Still, I can't blame the man for being afraid. After laying low with the Mujahideen, he tried to cut his ties with the US and return to the Soviet military. But along the way, someone came after him, and he was forced back into hiding. Could have been remnants of XOF looking to silence him. And you know the rest. He doesn't seem to know much about the parasites, but nevertheless, it'd be too dangerous to hand him over to Langley or the Soviets. We'll keep him here as originally planned. Good. You captured it alive. Boss, come on back to base. of steel pipes gave way and crushed one of the kids. The boy named Ralph. They tell me he died instantly. I'm sorry, boss. It's my fault. I should have been keeping an eye on them. I'll let you know if we learn something.
Please select a landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
You said that the nuke Skullface was trying to spread around the world were equipped with a failsafe. Something that could shut them down at will. His will.
Quite so. After all, he needed a guarantee that a buyer wouldn't simply turn the weapons back on him.
So how can they be stopped?
The criticality trigger, that is, the detonator, is a complete black box design. Any attempt to dismantle it causes it to melt in seconds, using the corroding archaea.
Assigned.
The design ensures that no detonation is possible unless it disengages the lock.
So he had a way to disengage it remotely.
Precisely. The client simply presses a button. At that moment, the detonator begins transmission with a surveillance satellite. The satellite reports to him how the client is trying to use the nuke. If he does not object, the lock is disengaged.
But if it's a risk to him in any way...
The detonator melts down.
Caution.
The same is true
anticipated.
if detonation does not occur within a preset time after the lock is disengaged. The nuke is rendered useless.
Who the hell would buy something with strings attached like that?
The client would never know until the moment they actually try to use it. Most likely, he would have explained the time delay as the detonators needing time to activate. And he only intended to sell to technologically primitive groups in the first place.
Let me guess. He'd claim it was defective and offer a replacement. Shadier than a used car salesman.
Skullface shakes your hand like a friend, using the other to control you like a puppet. This is how he works.
Code Talker. Haven't seen you eat a single thing since you got here. Let me guess. Photosynthesis?
Oh,
Please select
what
a mission.
makes you say that?
Well, a long time ago, I knew someone with a similar ability.
Well, you are correct. Most of my body is covered with parasites. I supply them with water, and in return, I receive sugars they produce when exposed to light. It isn't just my skin either. The parasites also act as my eyes. They have replaced many of my internal organs as well. It is thanks to them that I live on after over a century.
How did you obtain them anyway? Through your research?
I would like to say as much, but there is more to it than that. Let me take you back 20 years. I had hit a dead end with my parasite research. Then I was approached by a foundation. They said they had a sample of an unusual strain of parasite.
Which foundation?
Apparently, they had links to ARPA. But that is all I learned. I was somewhat ignorant of the ways of the world. Just being able to study it was enough for me.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Go on.
Half in doubt, I visited them to discover the body of an old man. Well, to be precise, his partial remains. A collection of parts, you could say. The man had died in an explosion.
An old man, you say?
His flesh had not decomposed. In fact, the tissue's cells were still metabolizing. The parasite had infected, or should I say assimilated with, the tissues, and was keeping them alive. I became obsessed with studying the body parts, foregoing food and even sleep. Every day was filled with new discoveries. The parasite's biology, internal anatomy, life cycle. But there was only so much I could learn through observation. And so I made a decision. To truly know the parasites, I had to live with them.
So, you implanted them inside you from the dead man's flesh?
Correct. It was quite a gamble, whether or not they would adapt to me. But fortunately, it appears I was compatible with them.
Please select
Or
a
perhaps,
mission.
through my many years of research, my immune system learned to tolerate them.
Were they that body's only parasite?
Yes. However,
Unit dispatched.
there was a separate specimen that supplied its host with adrenaline in response to pain, and yet another that could control insects at will through secreting heterogeneous pheromones. I wanted exposure to them, to take them into me, but my wishes were denied. Their records, though, provided clues that helped advance my research. Would you care to join
Please
me?
select a landing
A
zone.
life spent never worrying about food is a most wonderful one.
I think I'll pass. But thanks. This has been helpful.
Heading to Central Africa. Deploying. Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
This is Yellow Cake that Cypher was having the PF's transport. Before we met you, the boss recovered it from a truck crossing the savannah. Are there metallic archaea inside it?
Yes, the archaea metabolize uranium-235 to subsist. They must be stored inside Yellow Cake, or they cannot survive.
So those biological traces we took for impurities were actually the real cargo.
Of course, they are deactivated, so they do not trigger a sudden enrichment. They are like baker's yeast. Yet, they do gradually enrich the uranium as they feed. I am... Imagine you detected weapons-grade traces.
Yeah, we did.
And the malachite that was loaded on the truck had traces of uranium in it, too. So that's the flower, huh?
Start
Skullface was
assigned.
gonna sell do-it-yourself nuke kits. The uranium enriching archaea complete with a user's manual. And the ores with the uranium could be sourced by the client or provided by Cypher.
Even the trace amounts buried in common ores can be enriched to weapons-grade uranium by the metallic archaea. Proving that must have been the most important factor of the trials. That and the ability to successfully prevent detonation.
So if the amount of uranium in the ores are low enough, they can get past any inspection. And you only need a tiny amount of the archaea to act as the yeast. No great challenge to smuggle that either. The first step towards saturating the world with nukes.
His plan. That was not my intention. My only goal in developing the metallic archaea was to save the Dene.
What made you think a tool for creating undetectable nuclear weapons would save your people?
After 70 years, the Dene reclaimed the Navajo Nation from which we were banished. We bore all the hardships of poverty, but we were proud to live off the land we called our own. But in the moment the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, everything changed.
That's the target.
I don't get it.
I remember him. He was off base during the attack 9 years ago.
Soviet Union,
Bring him home, boss.
with the end of the Second
Please
World
select a
War,
mission.
suddenly there was a massive demand for uranium. And it was our ill fortune that the ground beneath the Navajo Nation was rich with uranium ore. The Black Ana government set up mine after mine, and many of the Dene worked them, never informed of any danger. Every day they went to work with no protection. The slag was simply piled out in the open. When rain fell, uranium traces left behind would seep out, and when the ground dried, it was blown about as dust. Land and water were contaminated, irradiated. Many of us became sick and died. That pain lives on to this day.
I had no idea.
Wanting more than anything to revive the land my forebears left to me, I was delighted upon discovering microbes that eat uranium. If they could be domesticated, I believed we could rid our land of uranium.
Were you successful?
No. The research called for funding on a colossal scale. But nobody was willing to invest with no prospect of a return.
And that's when Skullface showed up.
Correct. I can save you and your people. We share the same will. That is what he said to me. And I believed him. Blagana forced me to abandon my uranium cleanup work and focus on nuclear weapons. And he held all the Dene hostage. Today, the uranium mines within the reservation are finally closing down. It is simply less expensive now to source uranium overseas.
New victims, different places.
But uranium is a tactical resource. To rely on a foreign country for it is a difficult decision to make. And he was in the perfect place to influence that decision.
He could have condemned your people to the mines forever.
Commencing
The
platform
contamination comes not only from uranium. The fallout from the Nevada nuclear tests also settled on our lands. As if our fortune were not already bad enough,
Destination.
we are also downwinders. To save the Dene, I must complete my original research.
Subject on board.
Side ops
Leave the
list
rest to us.
updated. Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
Good. We captured it alive. Emmerich's finished development on that battle gear of his. Get back to Mother Base. Battle gear is an armored weapon developed to take on hostile bipedal weapon systems. But unlike the Soviet-funded Walker gear, the battle gear still hasn't been properly field tested. I'd like to assign a combat unit to take it on dispatch missions, so that we can evaluate its capabilities and reliability. Assuming you've got no objections, give the order to dispatch the unit from your iDroid. Boss, we need evidence to prove our suspicions about Emmerich. Head to the central base camp in Afghanistan and recover that AI pod. It's time we purge Diamond Dogs of that traitorous parasite once and for all.
The one that covers. The parasite that lives on the surface of the Skull's bodies is what gives them their power. Similar to my children, who live in my skin. I modified the parasites I isolated from the body of that old man, differentiating them with various abilities. One that can blend perfectly into its surroundings by exposing the pigments in its cells at will. Another that, by harboring multiple species of metallic archaea, can oxidize and reduce metal. Isolating the one that covers and transplanting it into an artificial medium should provide the same abilities as the Skulls, but they can only subsist within a human body. Once transplanted into the medium, they will eventually die. Another thing, the weakness of the one that covers is desiccation. Their surface moisture loss is greater than ours. The reason they give off mist is to alleviate this by releasing the salts inside them as microparticles, mist. But this dries out the atmosphere until they cannot even produce mist. And once their supply of water from the host runs out, the parasites are in danger. They, along with their host, enter a form of suspended animation. However,
Signed.
a similar effect occurs if they come into contact with a large amount of water.
Complete.
Rain, for instance, the one that covers will temporarily abandon other processes in his eagerness to absorb the water. Itiholone. Make the weather your ally.
Boss, we need evidence to prove our suspicions about Emmerich. Head to the central base camp in Afghanistan and recover that AI pod. It's time we purge Diamond Dogs of that traitorous parasite once and for all.
Please select a landing zone heading to Afghanistan. Deploying.
Finally burned out. The world is rid of his existence at last.
Was he still alive?
You could say that. But you could also say he'd been dead for decades.
What's that supposed to mean?
Biologically speaking, it's hard to say how much was his life.
Side effects from the treatment?
No, the primary effect. Keeping a dying host alive as long as possible. That is the whole point. But in the end, he grew too dependent on his children. As if he had any other way to keep on living. He first underwent parasite therapy before the Soviet Union became his home. His body was horribly burned. Fire washed across his thin young frame and stole his skin and his throat, even his lungs. Only through repeated therapies could the parasites keep him alive. Most of his life became something the parasites gave to him.
And then he lost the ability to die.
That is correct. The parasites live on past the host's death, still aiding cell composition. At that stage, there is no way to extract them from the host cells. There is no way of knowing when the last cell of Skullface's body would die. The only choice was to burn the whole thing. And his children, along with it. And I am one to talk. When my life is snuffed out, I expect you to treat my body the same way. And when I burn, I will truly be one with my children for the first time.
The map has been updated.
You say there were 3 English vocal parasites.
According to Skullface, yeah.
Skullface had 2 of the English strain with him. You burned both of them.
There was an oil fire. I tossed him in.
So that just leaves 1. And you tell me Skullface said he used it? He said it was very close to me. Very close. One of your comrades. Or someone ordered to kill you. Or he could have been speaking metaphorically. Metaphorically. Close to your spirit. Close to your heart. Someone who either loves you or despises you. The second one makes a long list. Whichever it is, act with caution. Skullface implanted someone with the English language strain. Who it is irrelevant. Why? I tell you what Skullface really meant. Very close to you means you will be exposed. All the infected here have been given the Wolbachia. Even if the vocal cord parasites infect them now, they cannot reproduce. But if there's a different host among us, host to the English strain, if that were the case, we'd see the symptoms. What about the non-English speakers? We have plenty of those, but the staff use English as a common language. But if that someone has not spoken English yet and begins to speak it now, there'd be another outbreak. The final mating pair of the English strain must be found immediately. Skullface is gone, but his threat still remains.
I'm sorry, boss, but the extraction failed. The support unit just isn't skilled enough. If you want to increase the success rate of Fulton extractions in bad weather, you need to improve the support unit.
Skullface has finally burned out. The world is rid of his existence at last. You say there were 3.
According to Skullface.
What about the non-English speakers?
We have plenty of those, but the staff use English as a common language.
But if that someone has not spoken English yet and begins to speak it now,
There'd be another outbreak.
the final mating pair of the English strain must be found immediately. Skullface is gone, but his threat still remains. On this base, do you see what the final mating pair is? With him dead, those parasites are the stain he wished to leave upon the world. His thirst for vengeance. In the flesh. Think. Does anyone here bear a grudge against you? Who would target you, specifically?
The ethnic cleansers that Code Talker mentioned, they weren't Skullface's true goal. All we have is circumstantial evidence, but here's my theory. It was Cypher who started developing the vocal cord parasites as bioweapons, parasitic weapons, and Africa was the testing ground for them. As Code Talker said, their purpose is the ethnic cleansing of only those who speak a particular language. So they could do a weapon of mass destruction to eradicate specific groups, races, ethnicities, or colonies by the language they speak. Or a kind of absolute language control. Or maybe a tool for those arrogant fools to build some misguided utopia. I could see plenty of uses for them. However, in practical terms, they wouldn't be as dangerous as you'd think. Counteracting the parasites is easy, after all. Cut them out of your throat to save your life, or just don't talk. That also prevents the infection from spreading. So if the international... were to find out about them, they'd no longer be the threat they were conceived to be.
Analysis complete.
In which case, their targets would be limited to minority groups as a deterrent or a terrorist tool. It's hard to imagine Cypher developing something like that as a main weapon for their arsenal. That leads me to think we've only tugged on one little thread in Cypher's grand tapestry. An obscure corner of their work, possibly forgotten altogether. In any case, things changed. When Skullface was forced to relocate to Africa and he saw that thread dangling. All the time he continued that research, he was secretly following his own agenda. The ethnic liberator parasites. His English language strain. Skullface said there were only 3 samples of the English language strain parasite, and I think we can believe him. Bringing
He's coming too. Roger that.
Fruition depended on creating an English version of the vocal cord parasites at all costs. But an English strain would have been useless to Cypher. Worse, it could have destroyed everything they'd built. It was the one type they couldn't allow. That means Skullface was forced to develop his English strain out of sight of Cypher's network. Naturally, he couldn't use the greenhouse facility Cypher had set up and filled with guinea pigs. Skullface must have found some secret place to create his precious few English parasites, hiding all evidence like a man cheating on his wife. Somewhere, an entirely standalone environment. And when his plan entered its final phase, he must have made the place disappear.
Where are your friends?
Some little room, could be anywhere, but now nowhere at all. We'll never know where he did it, but to elude Cypher's surveillance, it couldn't have been big. I believe Skullface was telling the truth.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Of the English language strain. Why activate Sahelanthropus in Afghanistan? This is how Skullface wanted things to play out. The Soviet Union secretly develops a new type of nuclear weapon and successfully deploys it in Afghanistan. Revealing the existence of Sahelanthropus results in a return to the glory days of the Cold War. The threat it poses reignites the nuclear arms race between the world's major powers. The demand for nuclear weapons increases around the globe. What if you then introduced a nuclear weapon anyone could get their hands on? Non-nuclear nations, militant groups of all shapes and sizes, they'd all jump at the chance. Sahelanthropus was a marketing tool to sell nukes all around the world. But I think it's safe to say that plan was stamped out before it got up and running. The world's intelligence agencies never did turn up anything conclusive on it. After all, Sahelanthropus vanished before word could spread. Everything that's happened is already a fading memory, never to join the pages of history. Except for Cypher. Cypher.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Already be working on something quiet beneath the surface. They'll use the pieces of data scraped together from this incident to build their own bipedal weapon. It'll take them a long time to complete it, but for now, the greed sector have found their new life's work. We'll have to be ready too.
Kept you waiting, huh? Kept you waiting, huh? Kept you waiting, huh?
Я не хочу умирать!
Where are the others?
The map has been updated.
You gotta extract him.
Hewitt's dug up some interesting facts about our skull-faced friend. 9 years ago, he was exiled to South Africa, stripped of political power. The upshot's that he ceased being a serious threat, in Cypher's eyes anyway. They eased up on surveillance, giving him an opening to establish his own military unit, one that answered to his will alone. Those men likely had no idea their orders were coming from Skullface. They probably didn't even know the organization was a part of Cypher at all. Anyway, it was in South Africa where he found renewed interest in parasites. And when he discovered the vocal cord parasites, he began to make his plan. Wipe the English language out of existence. Free the world, not by taking men's lives, but by taking their tongues. In his eyes, the greatest symbiotic parasite the world's ever known isn't microbial. It's linguistic. Words are what keeps civilization, our world, alive. There was something Skullface said.
The map has been updated.
America is made up of many peoples, but those peoples never mix. Quite so. One nation, home to hundreds of different ethnic groups, many of whom stick to their respective living areas. little colonies, not interacting with other groups.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Their land, organizations, relationships. But the United States of America is no melting pot. It is a salad bowl. It is not made up from one people, but for its minorities to function in society. A common ground is needed. Language. Even if the country is not one. No, because it's not one. The lingua franca is necessary. English. American hegemonism was born from the illusion that English could unite diverse ethnicities. In taking in people from around the globe, America became a microcosm of it. Now the boundaries between it and the rest of the world have become blurred. However different our neighbors may be, English enables us to create symbiotic relationships with each other.
Analysis complete.
If English can bring unacquainted neighbors together in America, this should hold true for the world. This salad bowl that is the world can also become one. I have spoken enough. Your men can take it from here. Will you permit me to rest? Have something to eat?
I thought you don't eat.
I can subsist without food. But there is more to the act of eating than nourishment. We receive nature's blessings.
He's coming too. Roger that.
We express our gratitude.
Sorry, it's, hearing you say you don't need to eat and that you're part of nature in the same breath. Anyway, what can we get you? Not exactly a five-star restaurant, but the kitchen's used to serving a lot of different appetites.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Hamburgers?
Even we, the net, have become Americanized. I eat them often back home.
And you just can't let them go. Well, as far as symbols of the American Empire go, hamburgers are pretty good. The victory of capitalism. Your people suffered so much at the hands of America, and you asked for hamburgers.
We have suffered more than you can know.
He's coming too. Roger that.
As an accomplice, a single dish, providing a balanced helping of nature's blessings. Meat, grain, and vegetables.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
This is the guy who can survive on photosynthesis. Balance has nothing to do with it. You just like a good burger.
That is also true. Be warned, though. I have very high standards.
You have a rendezvous at your destination.
Don't worry. I do too. All right then. One good old-fashioned all-American icon coming up.
I look forward to it.
Please select a deployment point. Buddy has infiltrated our map has been updated. Please select a mission. Unit dispatched. Unit dispatched. Staff assigned. The map has been updated. Please select a deployment point. Buddy has infiltrated. Please, the map has been updated. The map has been updated. Analysis complete.
Hey, quit kidding around. Snake?
You mentioned that the man on fire was crushed under Sahelanthropus in its hangar. Yeah. He was caught under the wheels of its transport platform.
But his body wasn't found.
What?
We searched the area the moment we arrived, but there was no trace of him.
I wasn't hallucinating.
Analysis
I know.
complete.
I trust you on that. That means someone must have taken the
Please
body.
select a
When I got
deployment
there,
point.
everything was still as it was. Even Skullface hadn't been touched. I can't see a reason to sneak into a place like that and drag out the biggest, heaviest guy there.
What are you getting at?
Only option left is...
Buddy has
He got up
infiltrated
and walked
the map
away.
has been
That
updated.
platform ran him over.
just ran him over.
You're saying that's not enough?
I don't want to believe it, but maybe not. He shrugs off bullets, even rocket strikes. There's no reason to think that would finish him. It seems ridiculous, but I'll start gathering eyewitness accounts just in case.
If you dig up anything concrete, I want to know.
You'll be the first, if I dig anything up. But I hope to hell I don't.
No kidding.
Оборудование повреждено. Похоже, дело рук врага. Прием! Это КП, понял. Немедленно проверить и сдать оперативную сводку. Конец связи.
Begin
The
cover
map
fire.
has been updated. Caution. Sandstorm approaching. Please select a deployment point. You have arrived at your destination.
Must be made whole. The philosophers must be reunited. I will devote my skills to that purpose. And with the Colonel's money, I will achieve that end. Just as I once created the culprits. The world used to be whole, but with the end of the Second World War, the philosophers began to fight amongst themselves, and the world was torn apart.
AI pod launch confirmed. We'll pick it up. I wonder what kind of
Please
secrets are
select
buried
a
in it.
landing zone.
I'll let you know if we learn something. Got a report from the intel team. Remember how the man on fire was crushed by Sahelanthropus? Well, the Soviets
Extraction
recovered his body.
arrived at Mother Base.
He'll really be dead. Boss, head for Yaha Ovu's supply outpost and secure the man on fire's body. If Skullface was right, and a thirst for revenge can turn a man into a demon and keep the dead alive, then this man on fire who's been coming after us ever since you woke up, well, that just might be what's left of our old friend Volgan.
Please select a support helicopter
Roger.
requested. Staff assigned.
A ruler's greatest wealth is not money or land. It is the number of individuals under his control. Subjects who work, consume, are there to be used as pawns in war. For a capitalist ruler, his people's power becomes his power. You are the same. With your diamond dogs, you spin it with your speeches. But what you're doing is bringing as much talent as you can into your little domain. Every person another feather in your cap. Yes. Since ancient times, every civilization's ruler has had the same idea. When people unite under one will, they become stronger than the sum of their parts. And the one will is the ruler's will. And what do rulers use to bring people together? Language. In the Old Testament, It is written that only one language was spoken in Eden. A shared tongue that united all of humanity. Mankind eventually grew aware of its power and harnessed that strength to build a tower to the heavens. The mighty Tower of Babel. This angered
Analysis
God,
complete.
who splintered the language of man, and the tower was never completed. Languages emerged, and the earth was divided as men went their separate ways. Every age is the same. A ruler's first order of business, after conquering new land, is to force his tongue on its people. Napoleon, and now Zero. English is recognized around the world right now. The British Empire tilled the land with war as its hoe, then began planting the seed that is English. Eventually, American capitalism became the new instrument.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
We have to abide by one rule. English. For exploiting people's desires, English has become a leash that people gladly wear around their necks, it would seem.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
Good. We captured it alive.
Please select a landing zone. Heading to Mother Base.
Stay back. It's too dangerous. Hey. Back up, kid. I said no. You have to stay back.
Some things can't be helped.
Back to your quarters. What's going on?
Shabani. Mayaka 9 Kingo ya. Shabani.
It's down there. Hey, the tank at the bottom is filled with chlorine disinfectant. One whiff and you'll suffocate. Don't even. How could you let it fall down there anyway? You go down there, and it is over.
Boss!
Hey! Listen to me! There is no way to recover the body. What kind of stunt was that? Trying to panic us? Look. Here.
There's something I've been wondering. Why are you called Code Talker? During World War II, the U.S. military used the languages of different tribes, including the Navajo, as codes, right?
Please.
I know the term Code Talker was used to mean people sent to the battlefield to speak in those codes. Were you one of them?
Our mother tongue was indeed used for war. But I did not go. I was already over the conscription age. However, I was made to help craft the codes that were spoken. So in a wider sense, you could call me a code talker for that. Navajo is a complex language, and virtually no one outside the U.S. speaks it. They must have thought it was the perfect language to use as a code.
Yeah, in the end, the Japanese never cracked it. The cipher is king in information warfare.
Of course, they didn't simply speak in Navajo. They created substitutions for words according to a code book, and then translated those into our language. Young Diné was sent to the front lines of the Pacific Theater as code talkers. To fight is an honor for the Diné. They were the pride of our people. But I cannot say this history brings me joy. Words are alive. When they're spoken, life is breathed into them. They become a part of the listener. Our words were transformed into lifeless ciphers and used for war. This, after the Black Ana spent generations suppressing the language.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I guess we shouldn't be calling you Code Talker, huh?
No, I do not mind. The reason Skullface called me Code Talker was because I also am responsible for coding language into the vocal cord parasites. I am the same as those young warriors,
Thank you for putting
used for a cipher's sake. I must never forget that. The name, Code Talker, is a lesson carved into my being.
Oh, Snake! What is it, Snake? Remember Professor Galvez on his instrument during Peace Day? such a funny sound for a musical instrument. He said the Soviets invented it. Everyone sure seemed impressed. Music has no borders. The professor taught me that. Where's Professor Galvez anyway? I am so tired. I will just lie here a while.
Please select a landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Gaining altitude.
Please select a mission. Unit dispatched. Please select a landing zone. Heading to Afghanistan. Deploying.
You said Skullface ordered you to weaponize the vocal cord parasites. But you also said he wasn't the reason.
And he wasn't. I was seduced by the parasites.
Careful down there, boss.
That is a fact.
How? You mean from your curiosity as a scientist?
That I cannot deny. But there is more to it. The story goes back to the 19th century. To my earliest memory. One day, a man from the government visited our Hogan, our home. I cried as he yanked me from my mother's arms and took me away to an Indian boarding school. From that day forward, I became George. This was the name my teacher gave me. I was forced to give up my Dinek name, forbidden from speaking anything but English. If we dared utter a word of filthy Navajo, the teacher made us eat a bar of soap.
Yeah, that was the U.S. government's education policy for Native Americans.
To erase our words was like erasing our people. Their education was tantamount to ethnic cleansing. Over time, the overt persecution of our language stopped. But to this day, it continues to be eaten away by the lingua franca, that is English. Many of the Diné outside the reservations can speak nothing else. And it isn't just our language. Across the world, minority languages are being destroyed by dominant languages. Many are on the verge of extinction.
Enter the vocal cord parasites.
Yes, I began thinking that minority languages needed some sort of deterrent against dominant languages. In order that their peoples and cultures would survive. It was then that I came across literature at the Foundation claiming that man acquired language thanks to a type of parasite. One that distinguishes between languages as a precursor to reproduction. If I could just resurrect it, make it more pathogenic, I would have my deterrent against English. But I failed to hide that aim from Skullface. He noticed. Yes, I wanted to retaliate against the English language, though never did I intend to actually use it as he planned. You know how the story ends. I was forced to study how to make the parasites compatible with all the world's languages. All but English.
However, he in fact secretly isolated an English strain.
I will not be held prisoner by the man's phantom. The English strain must not be allowed to exist either.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated. Please select supplies requested. Analysis complete. Supply drop complete.
Good.
Analysis complete. Please select a drop point. Supplies requested. Supply drop complete.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Понял. Ищите подозрения.
incoming too. Roger that.
Это КП, понял. Будьте начеку. Выкройте врага. Конец связи.
Attack! You gotta extract him. Subject on board. Leave the rest to us. Stay. Where are we?
The map has been updated.
You gotta extract him.
Please support helicopter requested.
Это КП, понял. Последующие потери не
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us. You gotta extract him.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
Good. You captured it alive.
I barely recognize you, Colonel. Skullface used your thirst for revenge against Big Boss, did he?
Boss, I've updated the mission list. We've received some new job offers. The details are on your iDroid.
Please select landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Volgan, the GRU colonel, was burned alive with a Shagohod during Operation Snake Eater 20 years ago. Despite suffering severe burns to his entire body, he still clung to life. After you left Seleniarsk, Volgan's body was taken to a research institute in the outskirts of Moscow. But modern medicine couldn't explain why he was still alive. Not that the colonel was any ordinary man to begin with. That constant electric current he had running through his body that he could unleash at will. To be honest, I was always uncomfortable around him. Thought I might get electrocuted just by standing nearby. The institute studying him was tasked with investigating and developing human paranormal abilities. The comatose Volgan was used to further the Soviet Union's research into such abilities. But not long ago, the facility burned to the ground. And Volgan's body was never found among the rubble, even though the fire started in the room where they were keeping him. This occurred at around the same time you woke up. If Skullface was right, and a thirst for revenge can turn a man into a demon and keep the dead alive, then this man on fire who's been coming after us ever since you woke up, well, that just might be what's left of our old friend Volgan. It's not over yet. Back in '64, in Seleniarsk, you brought his plans for a utopia down in flames. That grudge is what's keeping him alive. The day the research facility holding Volgan burned down, a Soviet jumbo passenger jet happened to crash nearby, far away to the north of that hospital in Cyprus. On board the plane was a young boy who was being studied at the same facility. The plane fell to Earth from over 8,000 feet, but the boy's body was the only one not recovered. At almost exactly the same time as the crash, Volgan awoke in that facility. According to the Research Institute's documents, the gifts this boy demonstrated included psychokinesis and telepathy. To protect his mind from being inundated with other people's thoughts, he always wore a kind of gas mask. A rudimentary form of psychic insulation, apparently. We don't know where this boy is, but if Skullface is connected to him, we may cross paths with him yet. This boy is part of a new age where nothing we understand about the world makes sense anymore. Don't let your guard down.
Mission list updated. Please select a mission.
Boss, research materials have been stolen from Code Talker's mansion. The materials were packed into 2 containers and hidden in the jungle southwest of the mansion. You have to recover those containers. The pickup crew coming for those documents is none other than XOF. That's right. They're still active, even after Skullface's death. Now that he's no longer in charge, their original chain of command has been restored. Meaning if XOF gets those documents, Code Talker's research ends up in Cypher's hands. According to Code Talker, the research papers stored in that mansion account for over 50 years of study. The problem is the vocal cord parasites. If the papers documenting that research fall into Cypher's hands, they'll take another long, hard look at them. The ethnic cleansers we thought were history will become a reality. America, Zero, will have a weapon far more powerful than any nuke. Even worse, if this knowledge were to leak, the world, humanity, can't be entrusted with this kind of power. Recover the containers before the enemy extraction choppers arrive.
Deploying.
Boss, Code Talker's research has been stolen. The research materials have been packed into 2 containers and hidden in the jungle southwest of the mansion. Enemy extraction choppers will be there any minute. You have to find and retrieve those containers before they arrive. That area is being guarded by zero-risk security, and their client is XOF. If the choppers make off with the containers, that research will end up in Cypher's hands. That cannot be allowed to happen. One other thing, boss. We need a cargo-capable Fulton extraction device to recover the containers. Use your iDroid to order its development and have it dropped in.
Be careful down there, boss.
That's the target's predicted field of movement. It's up to you to find him. That's a target container. Looks like it's in a relatively open area. A target container. It's concealed by vegetation. Watch you don't miss it.
Please select a mission. Unit dispatched. Unit dispatched. Staff assigned.
Boss,
Enemy
looks like they're
presence
stepping up
detected.
security around the
The map
target.
has been updated.
Watch yourself.
Analysis
Guards,
complete.
they must know where the containers are. If you can
Enemy
just squeeze
presence
it out of them.
detected. The map has been updated. Analysis complete. Analysis complete.
Stay. Stay.
Visibility in the jungle isn't great. Watch out. You could run into the enemy at any time.
Please, feel the roots, the branches. Become one with the forest. The forest is aware of the enemy's noise. You must
Target extraction confirmed.
Extraction
That leaves one
arrived
target
at
to go.
Base.
Take care of the next one. Boss, our early warning radar just picked up the enemy choppers. We'll keep you informed of their ETA. Hurry up and extract the target.
You can't go firing on the XOF choppers. If we attack XOF now, it'll be a declaration of war against Cypher itself. That time will come, but it's not now.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated. Caution, rain approaching. Enemy presence.
Target extraction confirmed. Time to go.
The map has been updated.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss. Boss, we got Code Talker's research materials back in one piece. The medical team has them under lock and key in the quarantine facility. The materials should help their research into the vocal cord parasites. Cypher won't be getting their hands on them now.
Side ops
Boss,
list
about
updated.
that AI pod you retrieved from Emmerich's research facility. Guess what we found inside? A corpse. Human. The pod maintained a low internal temperature the whole time, and very little outside air got in. That would have slowed down decomposition. Still, the remains were mostly skeletal. Estimated time of death is between 6 months and a year ago. We put the screws to Huey about it. Listen to the tape. Turns out it was the body of someone we knew very well.
Heading to Mother Base.
Talk?
Anything?
Still living up to her name.
How about you drop the act? Who infected you with a parasite?
We can't let her talk. Put it back.
All I want's a name. That won't trigger anything. Tell me. Tell me! Your lungs have been barbecued. There's traces of rubbing alcohol in your alveoli. This was found adhered to your lungs, intact. A petal. White Star of Bethlehem. The hospital. Skullface sent you to Cyprus to kill Snake. You were burned inside and out. That should have been the end of it. But, all things considered, you look pretty damn healthy to me. We have Skullface to thank for that, right?
I was the only one capable of applying them to parasite therapy. Until he stole them from me.
Why are you here? Did Skullface send you? Or did you have your own score to settle with the boss? Refreshing? Salt water.
No! She'll die!
His life isn't yours to take. Enough.
That's enough. If she wanted to kill the boss, he'd already be dead. Same goes for us. She's had plenty of chances. She can talk. She's not here to kill anyone. You're wasting your time. It doesn't matter why she's here. She works for you now. She's in love with the legend.
What makes you so sure?
I was the same way once.
What if she's a spy?
What if I'm a spy? Or you? Go on all day.
Boss.
Let her go. She won't speak, so she can't spread the infection.
Nabegitin Tisch? Mish nagetin ti.
Oh.
Idiki plak anat e.
Oh. Ako kode jisdesni.
Dne bizad.
Belagana gesnita. Tatobe yasteta. Asetota. Dodoにした。Dodoにした。Please select a landing zone. Landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly.
Strangelove was doing AI research in that lab. Why hide that until now? Why? Okay, so what? I wasn't working alone. You've got to understand. You do understand, right? I didn't want to drag her into this. It's my load to bear, alone.
So you didn't create the AI intended to drive Sahelanthropus. It was Strangelove.
Skullface was never in favor of AI control. So naturally they argued. Strangelove, she got him angry and he killed her.
How? You didn't see it? So you found her inside that pod after the fact. And you just left her body to rot in there. Or perhaps you put her in there afterward.
I asked him not to take her away from me.
So she was killed by Skullface, but you asked nicely, and he put her body in the AI pod for you?
That's right.
Pathetic. You know, we have another idea. That you killed her.
Me? I couldn't kill her.
You killed her and locked her body in the pod.
I wouldn't. Don't treat me like one of you. I can't just kill anyone whenever I feel like it. I'm a normal human being.
Oh, I see. So you just shut her inside and waited for her to die.
I would never do that.
What, you mean she killed herself?
Yes. She climbed inside that pod and shut the door. It can't be opened from the outside. It was suicide. Suicide, I said. She killed herself. She got in when I wasn't looking and suffocated. She'd often try to do things like that. By the time I realized and opened the door, she wasn't breathing. I got scared and shut the pod again. I couldn't bring myself to open it back up. That's right. Me? Kill her? What is wrong with you?
I see. Just tell me one more thing.
Haven't you gotten enough today?
Okay, I see it's a painful memory. You don't have to answer, just listen to the question. You see, we examined her remains. She had a scar on her lower abdomen, a surgical scar. It had been stitched up and had fully healed, meaning it was long before her death. She had a child, didn't she? Your child. Where's the kid?
How should I know?
So there is a child.
I've never seen his face.
What do you take us for?
They took it all. Even my child. I didn't even know he'd been born. I lost everything.
How old would he be?
It's 4 years since then.
And you know it's a boy.
Strangelove said so.
And his name?
We called him Hal, even though I never saw his face.
Welcome back, boss. Boss.
Oh, Snake! What is it, Snake? Who took this? Strangelove? Maybe when she rubbed that sunscreen on me. Oh, I'm trying not to remember it. But you know, despite her quirks, Dr. Strangelove is a good person. I wish you'd come and say hello. I'm sorry, Snake. My head hurts. Could you let me rest?
Please landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Good job.
This is B-Quad. On station at LZ.
Please select a landing zone. Landing zone confirmed.
So what were they doing at Nzoya Badia, that facility with all the people laid out in rows?
The abandoned factory Shabani was held in. It is precisely as you guessed. Black Anna was coding languages into the vocal cord parasites. They infected the subjects with the parasites, then made an incision in the throat to expose the vocal cords. That allowed them to play recordings of a desired language directly to the parasites.
And the parasites learn the languages that way. That's some teaching method. I just don't get how a bunch of bugs had the brain power for it.
They don't. Do not judge them by human standards. They do not learn as a function of intellect.
Then how do they do it?
What language the parasites react to is coded into their genes. You could expose the Japanese strain to English for years, and it would never learn the language and react to it. The pronunciation, rhythm, and structure are different. But what about, say, Spanish and Portuguese? Linguistically, the two are very close.
Yeah, they're both Ibero-Romance languages.
Even so, a Spanish language mating pair exposed to Portuguese will not copulate. Only when they hear Spanish. Only then. And the majority of their offspring will be the same.
So it's a literal case of a mother tongue.
But if that's so, I don't see how the different strains can be created in the first place.
Well, among the many thousands of offspring, there may be just a few that react to Portuguese.
You're talking about mutations.
Correct. Playing the tapes helps to identify the mutant strains. Those specimens are then isolated and bred with one another. From their children, specimens that react more strongly to Portuguese can again be selected and bred. Repeating this process creates a strain that reacts solely to Portuguese and never to Spanish. Mutation and selection. No different to breeding roses.
So you kept increasing the change over the generations, adapting them to languages from all over the world. Must have taken a hell of a lot of patience.
More like patience. Just how many died for this?
There's something I still don't get. In order to tell which larvae will react to Portuguese, you'd have to let them develop and then see which copulate. That means you'd need tens of thousands of guinea pigs. There's no way you could do that in a facility that small.
For normal, selective breeding methods, You would be right. But there is a more effective selection method when training the vocal cord parasites. Go on. It is not only when mating that the parasites listen for language. Shortly before hatching, larvae display markedly increased activity in reaction to particular language. The active eggs can be identified under a black light. So the eggs that react to Portuguese are selectively placed in the throats of subjects. So you see, narrowing down strains that react to the target language is an effective process. Though I'm sure that even so, many lost their lives to create the various strains.
Taken against their will into that
Please
that
select
dungeon.
mission.
There are two reasons for playing the tapes for the parasites. One, to isolate the eggs that respond to the target language. And two, to cause the specimens raised from the selected eggs to mate.
I get how the system works. But why do they respond to language before they even hatch? It's not like they can mate from inside an egg.
It is because the larvae learn the language before hatching.
You mentioned that what language the parasites respond to is hard-coded into their genes,
A landing zone.
and that they don't have the brain power to actually learn a language. But then you say that the larvae at Nzoia Badia Bulu were learning the languages in the egg. Your story doesn't add up.
Your country is home to a unique songbird.
Star
The Japanese
assigned.
bush warbler.
Sure, what of it?
What a beautiful call it has. But no bush warbler can sing it perfectly at the start. As chicks, they can barely
Support
chirp at
helicopter
all.
has arrived.
They must learn from their parents and other adult birds. Only then can they sing properly and attract females. So naturally, there are individual differences in each bird's call. Though they start on the same footing, each bird is influenced by its teachers.
And the parasites are the same?
Like the birds, the parasites have a genetic predisposition towards a particular language. But while in the egg, the larvae's ears are tweaked by listening to the voice of the host. This tweaking ensures that the grown parasites will react better to the host's speech pattern.
Why would they have an ability like that?
Well, there are distinct regional differences within even the same language. Rare is the language that has no unique dialects. Yes,
Specify
learning the host's speech pattern before hatching attunes the larvae to whatever twist of pronunciation it will encounter. This adaptive ability is what makes them so formidable.
I see. So a language requires selective breeding, but the parasites can learn dialects by themselves.
Of course, having the egg-stage larvae listen to the tapes in the factory was not meant to teach them. It was more important to use that trait of theirs to identify the mutated strains. As I mentioned earlier,
Is that really accurate enough to use as a weapon? You could wipe out a neighboring ethnic group by accident if their pronunciation is too close.
what you say is true. In that sense, they are imperfect as ethnic cleansers. But for his purposes, they are good enough. His objective was not to exterminate any one ethnic group, but to render the world's lingua franca, English, inert.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Please select a mission. Please select a landing zone. Heading to Central Africa. Deploying.
No doubt, Skullface's plan is almost complete. At that point, I will no longer be of use to him. I must leave behind this record at least. A record of how the ancient vocal cord parasites became these abominable ethnic cleansing parasites. I believe he has two purposes for the ethnic cleansing parasites. The first, as their name suggests, is ethnic cleansing. This conflict between East and West that envelops the world will not last much longer. Once the Cold War ends, and the weight of America and the Soviet Union is lifted away, the ethnic conflicts they kept suppressed will all rise to the surface. It is not difficult to imagine that the radical sides will begin cleansing their adversaries. But what if an ethnic cleansing parasite matching the language of the aggressors were to be unleashed? The aggressors would be washed off the earth. At the very least, the idea that retaliation could eradicate your people would prove a powerful deterrent. The second purpose is the Englishization of the world. To cipher the organization, this is probably their main use. Man thinks in words, or rather, words are man's very means of thinking. If you erase a word representing some concept, the concept itself disappears from the world. Nishone means beautiful in Navajo, but the image that comes to mind when we say Nishone differs from the Blagana's beautiful. An azure sky, a rolling landscape, lush greenery. The meaning we place in Nishone has its roots in Dene culture. If we lose the word Nishone, the images of oblivion along with it, just as Orwell indicated years ago. Cipher, being based in America, is pushing Englishization for this very reason. Suppose all 5 billion people on this planet come to read, speak, and think in English. Their wills could also be streamlined under English. Cipher's control would be all the easier. Economic governance would progress in leaps and bounds.
A dumpster. Looks big enough to hide somebody. You could stash a downed enemy in there, or hide in it yourself. Just don't stand too close to me afterward.
Besides English, all they need to do is weaken other dominant languages competing with it. Russian, Chinese, Arabic. If people know they risk their lives speaking such languages, they will flock to the lingua franca, that is English. Cipher need not even focus attention on smaller languages. After all, they are already being eaten away by English. Business, education, film, commodities. English has permeated every area of global society. I can see this when I look at young Dene. Some of them have already lost their grasp of the Navajo language. It is said that over 2,000 languages of the world are facing extinction. This very moment, cultural concepts and forms of expression are disappearing forever. The spread of electronic networks gives greater meaning to Englishization. Networks have no national borders. By basing them on a single language, they can penetrate deeper into and between people. That basic point of unity provides the ideal environment for someone who aims to control people's wills. But how does this differ from building the Tower of Babel? The ethnic cleansing parasites attempt to rob man of his words. Such irony. It was the vocal cord parasites that gave words to him in the first place. Ancient man had no language, unable to produce complex sounds due to the structure of the throat. He could communicate only through simple vocalizations and gestures. Then the vocal cord parasites infected his larynx. Man's transition to walking upright did not gift him solely with intelligence, but also with his voice. At the time, the vocal cord parasites never harmed man. They merely took a small measure of nourishment. In fact, you could call it a symbiotic relationship. Some animal species use particular vocalization patterns to attract.
You gotta extract him
and reproduce. Songbirds, certain insects, and also the vocal cord parasites. The difference is that the parasites themselves did not produce sounds. Rather, they had their hosts, man, do it for them. Once secure on the human host vocal cords, a male vocal cord parasite caused the host to produce a certain sound pattern, something like a warble of a bird. Meanwhile, females parasitizing other host pharynxes need only wait. Upon hearing the sound pattern of an attractive mate, they would manipulate their hosts into making contact with the person it came from. The female traveled through its host's saliva to the other host's vocal cords, where the male was waiting and the pair copulated. We can only imagine how the female manipulated his host, but it was probably through smell. Smells traveled directly to the limbic system via the olfactory cilia in the nasal cavity. Volatile compounds released by the female would stimulate the limbic system, which controls instincts, making the host feel amorous. This kind of sexual selection naturally led to competition between the male parasites. Males that had their hosts produce sounds perceived by females as more attractive succeeded in copulating.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Evolutionary traits caused by sexual selection are curious. The peacock's feathers, the mannequin's dance, the firefly's luminescence pattern. Even with courtship behaviors that are not advantageous to survival, those individuals that excel in them produce offspring, and it escalates with each generation. The same was true of the vocal cord parasites. Courtship vocalization rhythms and intonations became more sophisticated, and in order for man to produce such sounds, they had to alter his vocal organs. By lowering the position of the larynx and developing resonating chambers, they enabled more complex pronunciations. But that was not all. The vocal cord parasites activated a transcription factor that would later control man's language ability. A protein that, due to its appearance, is called forkhead box protein P2, or FOX P2. Activating this transcription factor led to the development of brain function capable of creating sophisticated frequency changes. This was the pinnacle of the vocal cord parasite's prosperity. However, this sophisticated pronunciation control was too useful for man to ignore. Once human sexual activity ceased to be only seasonal, and having lost pigment-based sexual characteristics, distinctive vocalizations became the most effective means for humans to attract mates as well. Combined with logic pathways hardwired into the brain, or universal grammar, it was not long before advanced communication was possible. This was the birth of...
You gotta extract him?
Luckily for man, it was around this time that a particular retrovirus was circulating. While not lethal, it infected not only man, but the vocal cord parasite.
He's coming too. Roger that.
It is presumed that this virus removed part of the parasite's DNA and reverse transcribed it into man's reproductive cells. It was a vector. Among the genes it transcribed were the ones responsible for the production of language. The vocal cord parasite's vocalization genes were written into the human genome. The parasites were no longer of any use to man now. Man could use his voice.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Hindering the parasite's courtship vocalizations. Having lost their opportunity to reproduce, the parasites died out, leaving behind only the transcribed genes. The vocal cord parasites were once in symbiosis with man. Its genes even became a part of his. Humans and parasites are extremely close. As such, it will be extremely difficult for man's immune system.
You gotta extract him?
Vocal cord parasites. Even cutting them out will be no simple matter. Which is exactly why these ethnic cleansing parasites are such a formidable weapon. The rise of the vocal cord parasites goes back approximately 300 million years to the Permian period. At that time, they were not even parasites, but predatory autotrophs. They are believed to have been the common ancestor to the Pentastomida and the Cyclops genus of copepods. However, Earth's environment underwent a violent change at the end of the Permian period. The cause is...
He's coming too. Roger that.
That over 90% of the Earth's organisms at that time died out. The most pronounced threat to the proto-parasites was the severe reduction in oxygen concentration. The result was cladogenesis, a splitting that gave birth to a new strain that could parasitize other organisms' respiratory apparatus. This survival tactic helped lower their oxygen consumption, and inhabiting the throat kept them securely in contact with inhaled air. The best survivors were those that parasitized the reptiles that flourished at the time. Entering the Triassic period, the reptiles evolved into dinosaurs, and the proto-parasites shared in their success. Dinosaurs developed respiratory organs called air sacs to adapt to the low oxygen environment. These in particular helped the proto-parasites thrive.
You gotta extract him?
But another trial awaited them. The end of the Triassic period saw another drastic change in the Earth's environment. For most parasites, the male and female take the same host. Many are, in fact, hermaphrodites. Originally, the vocal cord parasites were as well. But for any strain to ride out a severe environmental change, it must secure a steady pool of genetic diversity. Another split,
Subject
The strain procreated with mates found in other hosts, and in order to increase its encounters with those mates, the new strain utilized the voice of its host. They came to inhabit the host's vocal cords. This truly was the birth of the vocal cord parasite. The parasites developed the host's pharynx to form resonating chambers and used them to produce sophisticated mating calls. The relatively upright posture of the dinosaurs was important in this, because the crooked L-shape...
He's coming too. Roger that.
...was suited to the development of resonating chambers. These developments ushered in a time of great prosperity for the parasites. But for the third time, the parasites had a major hurdle to overcome. The meteorite impact at the end of the Cretaceous period, which spelled the end of the dinosaurs. With their hosts extinct, the vocal cord parasites had no option but to find a new habitat. Birds, as genetic successors to the dinosaurs, with functioning air sac apparatus already in place. Birds were the perfect choice. But the parasites could not survive in birds that flew at high altitudes with thinner air. So they parasitized ground-dwelling birds and altered their respiratory system for the sake of reproduction. They gave the birds the means to produce sophisticated sounds. The syrinx responsible for chirping. This is the proof that points to activation of FOXP2 in songbirds as well as humans. The Cenozoic era began with a rise in oxygen concentration, which helped mammals to evolve and increase in size. The parasites then shifted to humans as a more effective host. Humans' bipedal upright walking meant that our throats could support larger resonating chambers. At first, vocal cord parasites entered humans using birds as their intermediate host. But eventually they changed to conducting their entire life cycle within human hosts. What happened next is as I have already described. People took the vocalizing prowess given them by the parasites and made it language. And once the parasites could no longer use it as their mating call, they died out. Or in other words, the parasites overcame all evolutionary hurdles except humanity. Skullface shared his opinion on this matter. He said the Ethnic Cleansers Project was sure to succeed. After all, the parasites had a grudge against us humans. To think we awoke them after such a long slumber, just so they could sate their thirst for vengeance. It is terrible, unforgivable, and yet, it is what I have done. I learned of the vocal cord parasite's existence in literature belonging to the Foundation. It was little more than a theory. The question was, why does only Homo sapiens among all primates have highly developed language? Human versus everything else. The missing link between these was the mystery that gave rise to this theory. I was fascinated by the idea of their existence. In the Dene creation myth, the Neyo Dene, who first inhabited the world, were insect-like creatures. I came to imagine that those insect-like creatures could be humans living in symbiosis with the vocal cord parasites. But I had not the faintest idea of how I could resurrect them. That is when Skullface came to me. What he offered me was not just assistance with my metallic archaea research. He told me the vocal cord parasites really existed. And not only did they exist, they had already been brought back to life in the modern age. an ancient human cadaver, host to the parasites of the time. Cypher excavated such a cadaver from a permafrost region and isolated the DNA coding of the vocal cord parasites. Naturally, they were long dead and could not be brought back, but there was an alternate vessel they could use. A relative species of the Pentastomida discovered in China.
Select a mission.
It had adapted to live in the nasal cavity of animal hosts, but its genetic sequence showed signs of common ancestry with the vocal cord parasites.
Unit dispatched.
Ontogenesis, the path of an organism to maturity, is like a roadmap of the phylogenetic evolution of the entire strain. Cypher used this to effect a reverse evolution of the modern parasite and resurrect the vocal cord parasites. They interposed a developmental mechanism to the ontogenetic stage analogous to when the relative species first appeared, the point at which it split from the vocal cord parasites, forcing its evolution down the other path. The vocal cord parasite path. The larvae this produced by the vocal cord parasites.
Please specify
reborn.
project.
I do not know in detail how Cypher accomplished this, but clearly they have access to high-level genetic technologies. Skullface said it was the work of a genius woman scientist, and that the relative species in question was first discovered by a group once called the Philosophers.
Please
I was
select a
tasked with
mission.
modifying the resurrected parasites. He charged me with two demands. First, to add lethality to these organisms that had once lived in peace with man, by unleashing the larvae's latent desire to consume nutrients from the host's lung tissue, making them eat and eat until the lungs were destroyed. Second, to have both male and female inhabit the same host and copulate then and there, only when exposed to
Please
specific
select a
pronunciations continuously over an extended time. What he would do to the Dene if I failed. I had no choice. Originally, the ultimate objective of the ethnic cleansing parasite project was the identification of not only languages, but of actual cultures. Language is deeply connected to ethnicity, but many languages are employed by multiple ethnic groups, and confrontation between those ethnic groups is by no means rare. If the cleanser parasites were to be a deterrent against ethnic conflict, they had to distinguish between groups using means other than pure language. The original plan called for this to be achieved by differences in the transmission vector. Each ethnic group has different lifestyle processes and eating habits. For instance, parasites living in shallow water and taken in through the skin could be used to target rice farming groups, or parasites using cows as their intermediate host would be ineffective against cultures that abstain from eating beef. But that is a lofty goal indeed. The current parasites mainly rely on droplet transmission. It would take extensive time to alter the transmission route. I eventually learned that the Ethnic Cleansers project had been shut down. It was Skullface who put it back into operation. But despite that, he told me to forget about the transmission route and just focus on language identification. I do not know why. I understand that the Chinese philosophers who discovered the relative species of parasite originally planned to develop a phonogrammic Alexia parasite. The left temporal-parietal region is home to the part of the brain that identifies the phonetic symbols of the English language. They wished to create a strain that would parasitize that region and suppress its literacy functions. The brain area responsible for identifying the logographs of Chinese, meanwhile, is in the left middle frontal gyrus, meaning that even if native speakers of Chinese were infected with the parasite, their literacy would be unaffected. Old and new, east and west, there is no limit to the delusions of those in power. But this delusion threatens to become a reality. I have to do something to stop this. There must be something I can do.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Good. You captured it alive.
Side ops
Boss,
list
I've updated the
updated.
mission list. We've
Mission
received
list
some new job
updated.
offers. The details are on your iDroid. Boss, some of the kids we've been keeping here have escaped. We don't know why they ran off, but it may have something to do with Ralph's death. The intel team's looking for them as we speak. I'll add information to your side ops list as it comes in. You need to locate and secure those kids. I'll try to find out what happened.
Please select a mission.
Boss, we need you to get back a film canister one of our informants hid in the field. He was working under my orders to investigate the extraordinaries that showed up in Cyprus. The man on fire and the floating boy that keeps showing up where they're not welcome. Apparently they were the subjects of some top-secret research conducted by the Kremlin. Unfortunately, that meant our informant drew the attention of the KGB's Directorate S, and they took him out before we could make contact. The good news is he placed a report in a film canister and hid it somewhere in Spookmake Keep. Just before he died, he transmitted VI of the hiding place to us, but the data was cut off partway through. The image is far from clear, but it might provide the clue you need. We'll be analyzing the data further to try to clear it up, but for now, get to Spookmake Keep. The KGB have already dispatched a Spetsnaz squad to retrieve that film canister and cover the whole thing up. Boss, there's no time to waste. Head to Spookmake Keep and use the VI as a clue to find and retrieve that target. Why was Sahelanthropus mobile? How are the man on fire and that kid connected to Skullface's plan? If we can just get that report, we can blow it all wide open. Then we can shake off the last remnants of Skullface and the phantoms he left behind.